Good Morning programme. Teresa Corish here with you. Before the our News in Irish, I gave you part of the interview I did a few days ago with Anne Berkery of Doon. She's daughter of Maura and the late Frank Berkery. And before the early part of it there, she was talking about her impressions of Vietnam. So we'll rejoin her now as she talks about Tibet.
Tibet is another fascinating country. And also very sad when you think of their history. The Tibetan people have been occupied since the mid-50s by the Chinese, and they're oppressing the Tibetan people. They are not allowed to practice their religion and their customs freely, and they're kept down by military law, military rule. So it was very sad from this point of view, but also very interesting to be able to see firsthand the culture that does still remain. No matter how hard the Chinese try, the Tibetan culture still shines through. Also, again, their religion is Buddhist. They have many, many monasteries, beautiful buildings, also dating back to 14th, 15th century. Many of their monasteries are ruins after the invasion and the revolution. The Chinese bombed many of the monasteries. Some of them have been rebuilt to try and satisfy foreign countries
who are in there keeping an eye on the level of persecution. Yes. Is that the idea? Yeah.
Yes.
Used to obliterate the native culture of the people.
At the moment, it's apparent that military rule is keeping down the people. Every place you go, every monastery, there are uniformed police keeping the people in check. Many times I stop people and ask them if I could take their photograph, and this always drew a crowd. And sometimes I'm standing in the middle of 20 or 30 Tibetan people, and the police would come up and break the crowd up because...
I know, yes, that any gathering is a possibility for exchange of ideas, and at all costs, this is what they don't want to happen.
All foreigners and tourists to specific areas, you go and see where they want you to see. So in fact you don't get a true understanding of the oppression that the people live under. The road that I travelled from Chengdu to Lhasa is actually a closed road. It's closed to foreigners, and I shouldn't have been there, but for me it was the most direct route to Lhasa. It would have been the quickest and the cheapest way. My other options would have been to fly, which cost too much money. So I chanced my arm. I was arrested twice. The first time I was arrested, the gift of the gab, I suppose, helped, and my tears. And again, these boys didn't speak much English, and there was lots of sign language. We had to use the phrase book, and I think in the end it was my tears that saved the day. The policeman told me that I had to leave the town the next morning at daybreak, and I had been having trouble getting lifts, and I said, if I don't get a lift, is it all right to stay for 2 nights in your town? And he said, no, if you don't get a lift, you must walk. So I walked for 3 days and covered 100 kilometers. Got blisters on my feet. I was starving. I didn't have any tent or anything with me, but luckily the Tibetan people that I met on the way were very hospitable, and they gave me food and shelter for the 2 nights that I was on the road. Then on my second occasion, it was more official. It was actually the tourist police that arrested me, and they had the English, they had their law books. They told me that I broke section 17 and 29 of the People's Republic of China, and they gave me quite a hefty fine by Chinese standards. By converting the money, it probably came to about £20, which isn't a lot of money, but in China it is quite, I could survive on £20 for 2 weeks. To me it was a lot of money at the time, and I tried to plead poverty and crying again. And they told me that I could hawk my camera to raise the money. But in the end, I think they did feel sorry for me, and they offered to buy me my bus ticket to Lhasa. I was only 12 hours away from my destination, and they offered to buy the ticket at the Chinese price for so that I could afford to pay the fine, because as a tourist you usually pay 4 or 5 times more than the local person would pay for both transport and accommodation. So I got off lightly in the end.
So definitely you might say you got an inside track view of the real life in Tibet. Were you put in a prison or were you brought to a police station?
Yes, they brought me to the police station, and then they confiscated my passport. And from the police station, they designated the hotel that I must stay in, and they collected me the next morning. So it wasn't actually, I didn't feel like a criminal, but they did make me feel as though I had done something wrong, but I knew I had anyway before. I was just hoping I would be able to talk my way out of it, but it didn't work the second time.
Yes. Well, maybe the first police group, maybe the password to the second group. But anyway, you survived it, and you're here to settle the tale. And they didn't confiscate the roll of film and the camera?
No, actually, that is a good point, because most of the area where I had travelled through, it was a military zone, and it was for this reason that they didn't want foreign travellers passing through. They had lots of radars and huge military camps, I would say. There must be, I couldn't even put a figure, but probably 2 million soldiers on this particular road.
What idea did you get of the Tibetan people, apart from your experiences with the policemen?
Yeah, so the policemen would be the Chinese.
Yes.
And as I have said previously, they rule the Tibetan people, which differ very much from the other Asian nationalities that I have encountered. They're quite vivacious people, very outgoing, and I notice this mostly in the ladies. They are not at all shy.
Are they confident, the women?
Yes, they are very confident. In most Asian countries, there doesn't seem to be any discrimination between the sexes, and in fact, the females usually do most of the work, the hard labour. The females are out in the fields, the females plough the land, etc. And this is also true in Tibet. But the ladies seem to be very at ease with both Westerners and the Tibetans, both male and female. They don't have any inhibitions whatsoever. Their way of life is quite amazing. I've heard these people are different. They dress quite amazing. They wear skin fur, animal fur, and skin coats and skin furred boots. They wear many layers because it's so cold, the weather is so cold. They ride into town on their horses. It reminded me of the Wild West, what I would imagine the Wild West to be. They look quite Indian in their appearance. They've got a red tinge to their skin. They wear long hair, both male and female, long and plaited. And they are very different in appearance to the Chinese. And you can see that they are a totally different race. And it's very sad to see the way they are being oppressed by the Chinese. Their true leader is the Dalai Lama, and to this day they still believe this. They still pray to their Dalai Lama, and they consider him both their religious and lawful leader. And the efforts of the communist regime in China isn't, it's very intensive, but it doesn't seem to have made all that inroads into their own native culture. Is that it? They seem a very strong people, and it's going to take a lot more to put them down, I think.
You were coming to the end of your...
We'll take a break there, and I'll go in then to the last part of the interview I did with Anne Berkery of Doon. She'll have reached Nepal, and that was where she spent the last 2 weeks of her Eastern journey. We'll be back with Anne in just a few seconds.